Hey, this is Gabe. Welcome back to the shop. We're going to be making a Celtic knot scalloped pen. I've made this blank once already and I wasn't happy with it the way it came out because it wasn't centered exactly the way it should have been. So I'm going to redo this. And I've never done a scalloped Celtic knot before, but in my mind I had an idea of what I thought it would look like. So, and I've never seen it done either. And anyway, so we're going to go ahead and describe what we're going to be doing. So this is just a piece of scrap that I started with. And as you can see, if you've never done a Celtic knot before, the secret to a Celtic knot is not completing the cut. So you just basically 45-degree angle or whatever angle you like to use, glue in a piece of wood, and then rinse, lather, and repeat. Do that all the way around. I'm adding in some aluminum inserts. And I have 4 of these pieces of wood. The thickness is the thickness of my saw blade, which is 2.75 millimeters. Initially, I liked, when I made this was a 1/8 inch piece of wood here, and having to adjust the blade for the cut was a real pain. So anyway, I thinned these out a little bit, and I think it will look better being a little bit thinner. So it doesn't look so heavy like it does right here. Anyway, that should give us some nice contrast in the colors of the wood. So my jig is a basic jig, miter jig. I have it set for 45. I have a small stop block here, clamped in place. I was using a spring clamp for the last one that I was working on, and this didn't provide enough tension, so my piece of scrap here moved on me, and I had to consequently throw that piece of wood away because my cuts weren't lined up. So I'm going to be using some zebra wood here on this one. And the first thing we're going to need to do when we do this is we need to make sure we have an idea of what is what. So that's going to be the back of the blank. So my first cut is going to be the bottom here. Then I'm just going to rotate it all the way around so I know what I'm doing. So those are marked 1, 2, 3, and 4. So my first cut is going to be like this. That is going to be seated all the way back against that piece of stop block right there, that piece of scrap wood. This spring clamp is going to be used to secure that to the jig. And then for my second cut, I'm going to take these 2 shims, which is the same thickness of these 2 pieces. Then after the first cut, I'm going to move this forward, put the 2 shims in here, slide it back, clamp it in place, and then make a second cut. And then you just basically do that all the way around. Okay, so as you can see, that is our first cut. That piece of wood fits in there like that. So, okay, so again, orientation is important. Put the X to the back of the blank. The 2 shims in place. And we're going to clamp that. You can see what that looks like. Make sure your your blank is long enough. This is kind of a short blank, so that the back of the jig where the table saw hits right here doesn't hit this when you complete the cut. Okay, so you can see that cut is much wider now, and it doesn't complete the bottom. So if everything's right, it looks like it needs to open up just a little bit more though. So that's one. Oh, okay, so that's two. Both of those are in there. Now I'll just CA glue that, thin CA glue that in place. Okay, like I said, I'm going to be using some thin CA. This bottle is almost empty, but I have a brand new bottle. And you can see the brand there. I just got that at Rockler a while ago. Very important to use some wax paper. And you can see how that's sandwiched in there like that. Nothing complicated. Try and make sure you have long enough pieces. Don't cut something that's going to be short inside. Make sure you have plenty of meat on the bone to work with. And then that is pushed all the way down, so you may want to use one of these to make sure that is seated all the way. And make sure those are seated also, and double check that front to back, and that looks really good. So the way I do it is pretty simple. I just flood the blank inside and on both sides. Kind of generous with it. I don't like a glue-starved joint. Let that work its way through. And again, that is 2.75 millimeters thick. And these are cut about 1.5 inches long. For this is about 7/8 inch or 3/4 of an inch, excuse me. But diagonally, I like to make sure that I have plenty of material to work with front and back. Okay, so now I'm just going to take that to the disc sander and the bandsaw first, cut it off all the way around those three sides, then disc sand it nice and flush so that it looks like that. We'll be right back. Okay, so that is our first cut. That looks pretty good, so we're going to rotate it to number 2. Make sure the X is on the back. Your shims, it doesn't make any difference if you put the shims in first or second. So whatever preference is for you, that's fine. That it will work itself out. Again, make sure this is not going to hit. Okay, so that is my first cut. You can see what that looks like again. So obviously that's not thick enough. So I'm just going to put that back in place with the shims. That's lining up correctly right on that bottom corner. Okay, those are in there like that. We'll just glue that up just like we did earlier. make sure there's a little bit more glue. Okay, we'll just cut those off next and then sand it. One thing worth mentioning is the bandsaw that I'm using, I have a metal cutting blade on it, so it makes quick work of those aluminum pieces. Okay, so that's what it looks like so far. So we've got 2 cuts. Now I'm just going to move on to number 3 and then number 4. Just repeat the same process that you've seen, but I'm going to do that off camera, and then when we come back, I'll have all those pieces done. Okay, so here we are all the way around, and that looks pretty good so far. So next step is to cut this in half and then trim them to length for the pen blank we're going to use. Okay, so the pen blank tube, the length that I want to use is going to be 62 millimeters, and I'm going to be short. I want to cut it short here. That's just over 1/4 inch, maybe around 5/16. So I need 2 pieces cut 31 millimeters. So each of these are cut at 31 millimeters. And then I'm going to segment these here in the middle, similar to this, but I'm not going to use the bandsaw or the drill press jig, because I want to be able to be sure that I'm right in the middle here, not a gap on one side. Otherwise, all this is for nothing. So I'm going to use the table saw jig, and then I'm going to cut these out over here. I'm probably going to have to glue some supports on the back so I can clamp that in place. Okay, something worth mentioning. Now we're going to cut these here on the 60-degree side. Now you can see I have these marked on both pieces. These are reversed and glued back together using the offcuts. And you can see that if you've never done these before, these are opposing cuts. So 1, 2, and then 3, and then 4. Now I have the same blank on the other side, the other half, marked the exact same way. If I look at it like this, I can see that this was the same piece of the same grain from both sides all the way around. So I know that my first cut on both pieces is going to be there, second cut, third cut, and then fourth cut. That way I can make sure I can keep the grain oriented as much as possible. So 60-degree side, and I want to be sure that although I didn't mark it, which I should, so that I can know what I'm doing, and hopefully, yeah, I'm going to reuse that same side like that, so that's perfect. My mind doesn't drift, and I don't have any screw-ups. This is lined up. If you've never seen this before, I'll link a jig, the video how I made this jig. This lines up here, so where this line is on the end of the jig, I need to line up my cut, the middle of that blank. So that way I know that when I cut this, and then I glue my segment in there, this is a 60-degree cutoff. I'm using Paduke in here, and I think Paduke will be a great contrasting color, like that in there. So I just need to adjust my stop. Okay, I have my stop block in place. That's clamped in and secure. This is my piece to cut. Remember, the X goes to the back. Clamp that in place. Okay, so that is our first cut. And then we'll just glue one of these in place, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so as you can see, that is our first cut like that. So now we're just gonna flip that over to our second cut. We'll just glue another piece on right there, just like that, and repeat all the way around. So far, we made number 1 and number 2 on camera, and off camera, I did number 3 and number 4. It's exactly the same process. So if you understood 1 and 2, well, then now you know how to make segments on the table saw. And you could do it the exact same way on the bandsaw, depending on the jig that you have. So you're going to need to make 2 of these for this pen. So make another one just like this off camera. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill it out. I'm going to use the 4-jaw chuck. Like I said, this is my preferred method of drilling. And the reason, especially for this one, because this one's short, I don't have to drill on one side, flip it over, and then do the other side, because this fits in here completely. Now, I think I will just sort of tap it a little bit on one side just to relieve any stress from blowout. Just flip this around. And you can see that that's a perfect drill on both sides, right down the middle. So no tear out, front or back. Normally with a larger blank, I will use a different type of a drill bit. I use a brad point. This is similar to a brad point bit, but my brad point bit, my 3/8 one, is pretty dull. So I haven't purchased a new one yet, so I'm using my DeWalt drill bit set for this. But anyway, now we'll just go ahead and glue the kit up. Off camera, I had also cut a piece of Gabon ebony, 1/4 inch thick, drilled that out on the lathe, of course, and using these same segments that you've seen in the guitar build pens, putting one of those on each side. Now these are sized for cigar pen, but because of the diameter of the blank, it should be fine. It's just barely a little bit larger, so nothing to worry about. So I need to pay attention to what is what. I almost put that on backwards. So that has a little bend in it. I need to straighten that out just a little bit. That's better. So remember, I want the grain from the 2s together, the 4s together, and so on and so forth. And like I said, these are 31 millimeters on each side. And then that is 1/4 inch, that Gabon ebony. And you can see on my fingers, that's just that's just barely protruding. Maybe, actually, you know what? I could just barely feel it, so it's actually flush. So that's working out pretty good. Just want to make sure those are nice and flat so everything's lined up. Going to use some quick grips. Nothing fancy. You know, I should actually put some medium glue on there first. Normally I just saturate it, but just because that's a lot of glue space, I don't like to put on the CA normally because I've done it before, and I've had this because of the accelerator on that bite right away. So I'm just gonna do it the other way like I was normally going to, just because of the accelerator. If it didn't have accelerator all over that wood, then I would just go for it like that. But I'm just gonna loosely grip that, flood the blank with some thin, and that should work its way up and down the tube. Probably doesn't look like it, but it should. Give it a squeeze. Hit it with some accelerator, of course. I feel like gripping the gloves right off the bat, so I'm just going to let that sit, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. I'm going to pour a little more glue, so I can be a little generous with that. See that? Already sticking together. Okay, now that that blank is cleaned up, I think that's going to look really good. Okay, now we're back and we're getting ready to start to turn. But before I do, I want to show off one of the first executive pen kits I turned. And you can see this one's very thick, way too heavy. I really wasn't sure what it was going to look like when it was put together, so I turned it, obviously, assembled it, and then found out that this is too heavy. So this is about 12 millimeters thick. I think about 10 millimeters should do the trick. And anyway, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start this one up over here. Remember to wear safety glasses and dust protection. Okay, I just wanted to stop that real quick so I can take stock of what these are going to look like. And they look like they're lined up pretty good. I've got a point over here and a point over here. And those look pretty balanced. And I think that's going to be all right. Okay, so you can see the further we go down, the tighter those knots get, and the gaps between the scallops on the middle and the end opens up significantly. And one of the reasons I stopped is because I know there's not a lot of wood there, so I want to be able to make sure and put some CA on that and tighten those up. So I'm just going to flood the blank with some thin CA and then start turning some more. Okay, we have our blank turned, and now we're going to go ahead and assemble it. I haven't assembled this in years, so I actually have to consult the instructions. Okay, so that's the tip. Looks like this part goes in next. And I guess either side is as good as the other. That looks pretty balanced. Looks like the spring goes in next. And only 2 pieces left. So this part looks like that twists on there. And that fits over there like that. And then that should, oh, yep, that works. How about that? So, okay. Not as heavy looking as the first one I showed you, but I think overall that looks pretty good. If I were to do this again, I would do these a bit thinner, and I would cut these not at a 45, maybe a 60 like I did these here to bring these out, and I would probably do it in with wood, not aluminum. I think sort of takes away from it. It's a little too heavy maybe, but anyway, concept is okay. It looked better in my mind, I think, than how it actually looks. But anyway, let me know what you think. Have a good day. Hey, this is Gabriel Castro. Thanks for watching my YouTube channel. You can click on the link right here and subscribe. You can watch a video series right here or the latest video right here.